And I am pleased to welcome now Senator Tom Cotton. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, Hugh. Good morning. Good to be on with you. I understand you're at the White House today.
I am at the old executive office building in the Indian Treaty Routing, broadcasting about tax reform, and we'll talk to you about that in a moment. But a couple of questions first. I'm profoundly uncomfortable with any political discussion of Gold Star families and what presidents do or don't do. You are a former member of the Old Guard, and so to put into context your response to my question, would you tell people what the Old Guard is?
Sure, Hugh. The Old Guard is the escort to the president, the official ceremonial unit of the Army at Arlington National Cemetery, where each day they perform dozens of funerals, laying to rest our fallen comrades. They guard the Tomb of the Unknowns. Unfortunately, on occasion these days, almost every night when I was there 10 years ago, we'd fly to Dover Air Force Base as well to perform the repatriation ceremony for remains that would return from Iraq or Afghanistan. But the Old Guard's primary duties are to ensure that we pay honor to those who have fallen to defend this country and therefore inspire the next generation of warriors and comfort the families of those fallen.
Now, the politicization of the return of remains that occurred at the White House yesterday with shouted questions at the president about why he had or had not commented about the soldiers killed in Niger struck a new low for me with American media. I don't approve of this. The president said he doesn't know what other presidents have done, I just would be so uncomfortable. What did you make of that exchange as a member of the Old Guard yourself in the past and aware of what presidents of both parties do with Gold Star families?
Hugh, I didn't see the exchange itself at the president's press conference with Senator McConnell, but I will say this. Any commander who sends troops into combat carries a very heavy burden, and that's true from a company commander all the way up to the commander-in-chief, and each one deals with the fallout of those decisions and those actions in a different way, but it's not something that I think any of them take lightly or a responsibility that any one of them doesn't view as among their first and foremost responsibilities, no matter how they handle it.
Now, you are reported to have many conversations with President Trump. Has he talked about your time as a combat soldier in Iraq? Because we're about to turn to the Kurdistan situation and the Baghdad situation. Has he asked you about your first-person experience?
Yes, he has. We've talked about my time in Iraq and Afghanistan and the context of the decision he's made there. We've talked about my time at the Old Guard and the need to expand Arlington National Cemetery so it can accommodate my generation of veterans in 20 or 30 years. So it does come up in conversation, and I think he values my experience. He values the experience of those generals around him who served a little bit longer than I did, like John Kelly or H.R. McMaster. I think his affection and respect for the military is manifest and genuine.
Have you had a chance yet to talk with him about what is going on in Kurdistan with the Iraqi Shiite militia attack on Kirkuk, led apparently by General Soleimani of the Quds Force in Iran?
No, Hugh, I haven't, but certainly something that we need to get under control. I mean, the Kurds have been probably our most reliable ally in the Middle East, putting aside Israel and perhaps Jordan for the last 25 years since the first Gulf War. And that's true not just in Iraq, but in Syria as well, where they've provided some of the main fighting forces against the Islamic State. So I don't think we can find ourselves in a position where we are siding with, as you say, Shiite militias that are deeply infiltrated by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps shock troops fighting against the Kurds. That said, I mean, the Kurdish question is a very sensitive question, not only for Iraq, but many other countries in the Middle East. And I think the best thing that we can do is try to diffuse the tensions between the government in Baghdad and the Kurdish regional government, for instance, over oil-sharing revenues and the autonomy that the Iraqi constitution grants them. These tensions flare up from time to time, but the most important thing we can do right now is we're trying to finish off the fight against the Islamic State and confront Iran is to try to lead the negotiations that'll diffuse those tensions.
Now, Senator Cotton, I don't expect you to confirm or deny this given that you're on Senate Intelligence, but my own reporting tells me we have special forces in Kurdistan trading Peshmerga. And so if the Iranian-backed Shia militias are firing under the direction of Soleimani at Peshmerga. They're firing at Americans again, which would not be surprising given that a number of people, including the Secretary of Defense Mattis and others, have said the Iranians are responsible for the deaths of Americans in the Iraq conflict dating back a decade or more.
You're right. I don't want to comment on that particular question, but I will say this. We, of course, have Americans in Iraq, many thousands of them, and elsewhere in the Middle East. And all of those Americans are at risk by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They have been targeting Americans in the Middle East for 38 years now. And most of the problems in the Middle East today can be traced back to Iran and the revolution in 1979. I think President Trump recognizes that. It's one reason why he chose not to certify the nuclear deal with Iran again, because he realizes that that deal has empowered and emboldened Iran throughout the Middle East. It's encouraged them to undertake the kind of mischief you see in Iraq and what you see them doing in Syria to prop up Assad's outlaw regime, and now not just providing Hezbollah with missiles and rockets, but helping them build guided missile factories. So all the Americans of whatever strife we have in the Middle East are at risk at Iran. That's why Iran is such a mortal enemy.
And that General Soleimani is there. What do you draw from that?
Well, if Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC, is in the Kurdish region in Iraq, it just goes to show how serious Iran takes what's happening in that area. He is the vanguard of the Iranian Revolution. His fingerprints are over Iran's aggression in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and he goes where they have the highest priority fighting. So if he is there, you can be certain that the supreme leader and the Ayatollahs view that as critical to their interests.
Now, let's turn to Axios AM, and I'm hoping that you can confirm for me yesterday's big story that Columbus, Ohio remains one of the most vibrant places in the United States.
Right after many of the beautiful places in Arkansas, Hugh.
Do you have any comment on the Axios AM story? The other one, that was actually in yesterday's Axios AM, Columbus, Ohio. But the lead item had to do with Senator Cotton going to the CIA. Any comment on that, Senator Cotton?
Well, Hugh, last I checked, the CIA had a director, and he's doing a pretty good job, in my opinion.
So have you been approached by anyone in the administration to ask whether or not you would be willing to serve? And I assume that you're a soldier. You'd say you'd be willing to serve wherever you were asked.
Hugh, Hugh, it's a great honor to be able to serve in the Senate and serve the people of Arkansas. So I don't want to comment on the kind of personal conversations I've had, but I'm very happy right now serving in the Senate and look forward to continuing to do so.
Well, then let's talk about the Senate. I have a piece coming out later today in the Washington Post saying, in short, that if the Senate doesn't confirm every judge nominee that President Trump sends up by the inauguration anniversary, they're asking to lose the majority. And if the blue slip stands in the way, you have to burn the blue slip. Mitch McConnell agrees with that. Does Tom Cotton agree with that for circuit court judges?
Absolutely, Hugh. In fact, I'd be more aggressive. I wouldn't say January 20th. I would say year's end. We are moving as quickly as we can on circuit judges. The courts of appeals adhere the vast majority of cases in our country, with only 80 cases a year or so reaching the Supreme Court. But I think we need to fill all those vacancies for which President Trump has nominated a judge and sent his name and information to the Senate by year's end. Obviously, we're going to be very busy over the next 2 months or so with the budget and with the tax bill and then ultimately a spending bill. But if necessary, we need to stay in overtime through the holidays if necessary to confirm all these judges and confirm executive nominees and ultimately to force the Democrats to stop the unprecedented obstruction. You know, just yesterday, for instance, we confirmed Callista Gingrich to be the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican. She got 70 votes. In the old days, Hugh, and by old days, I don't mean 100 years ago, I just mean a couple years ago, the minority would never drag out the vote for someone who was going to get 70 votes. You know, we'd yield back most time for debate. We'd waive procedural votes and just go straight to the confirmation vote itself. Yet, I guess because Callista Gingrich is married to Newt Gingrich, the Democrats forced us to wait an extra 11 days over our Columbus Day state work period. That
20 seconds, Senator. If Bob Corker believes World War III is imminent, how can he have a hold on Rick Grinnell and other European ambassadors? I mean, 20 seconds.
Yeah, Hugh, I'm not aware of the particular circumstances of most of our ambassador nominees in the committee, but if they've been submitted and moved to Congress, then we need to try to move them out as quickly as possible.
Senator Tom Cotton, always good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us, Senator. Don't go anywhere, America. From the White House, it's Tax Cut Day. Coming up, tax cuts now.